Seeing none, let's call the roll on the receiving the communications. Pam?
You did get a voice vote on the communication. Voice vote. Yeah.
I had a motion. I had a motion in a second. We can do a voice vote.
Yeah,
All in favor of receiving communication, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The communications are approved unanimously. It brings us to the regular agenda. And again, thank you everyone who's going to be presenting and working through our technology issues with us. The first item here, we have County Executive extended continuation of local state of emergency due to coronavirus pandemic. Is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Zach, seconded by Commissioner Gershenson. Any discussion on the resolution? And Sean, you're on. I mean, this would extend the state of emergency declaration for Oakland County that expires on the 17th and extends it to the end of the month. Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one generic question, which I think, David, you and I have talked about it a little bit in the past, relative to an exit strategy. I agree with extending it till the 30th, but I'd like to see something relative to an exit strategy or some wording, potentially part of the resolution saying that we will develop an exit strategy so we have something prepared if the 30th comes and goes and we're ready to move forward, or even if we unfortunately have to extend it again. I'd like to have something in process relative to planning. So it could be something as simple as forming a subcommittee to do that, and or just requesting the administration to do something like that. So I'd like to see some wording included into the resolution along those lines.
Okay. Do we want to work on an amendment between now and the board?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. I'd be happy to work with you, Commissioner Spiz, on drafting some language that's satisfactory to that point. Seeing no further discussion, Pam, please call the roll.
Commissioner Gershenson?
Yes.
Angel?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Spiz?
Yes, with the understanding we'll put this on a regular agenda also.
Okay. Woodward?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. And duly noted, we'll place this on the regular agenda for our upcoming board meeting. Go ahead, Pam.
I have made a note of it.
Okay. So the motion passes. It moves us on to the next item. County Executive Community Census Support Funding Grant Acceptance. Is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Gershenson, seconded by Commissioner Gingell. This is a grant from the Michigan Municipal League Foundation in the amount of $250,000 to help support our census efforts, and enumerates the activities that help the support. I don't know if there's any further discussion on the matter, other than I guess the only other thing I would mention is that staff that's supporting our census outreach, I think sent something out to us earlier today, encouraging not only all commissioners, but all of our stakeholders to, and starting Thursday, 7 days of action to continue to push up our numbers of folks completing the census as we find ourselves in this pandemic state. So just make sure folks know that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is Eileen Kowal. I was just wondering, should it have some language in there that would say no matching funds required? Is that necessary? Just throwing that out.
It's not necessary. We're just refining. There is no matching funds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Pam, please call the roll.
Commissioner Gingell?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Quarles?
Yes.
Spiz?
Yes.
Gershenson?
Yes.
Woodward?
Yes.
Carried.
All right. The motion carries. Moves then to item 3, the Management and Budget 2020 Equalization Report. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Zach, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. Let's open it up. Mr. Heber is on. There he is. Mr. Heber, why don't you talk us through what we're looking at? We look at everything.
I'd be glad to. First of all, can you hear me?
We can hear you clear. Yes.
Okay, thank you. What you have before you is the annual equalization report of property values within Oakland County. As you're aware, equalization is a system of checks and balances where, while the county does contract assessing for some of the communities, we still keep records and measure level assessments for the remaining communities that have their own assessor as well. In your PDF, the equalization report starts on page 34. But I'd like to draw your attention to page 47. It's a summary page. While you're getting to that, I'd just like to report that all the local assessors, worked through their board review process during March, with the local boards at a very difficult time, got through that process and reported their totals to us faster this year than in prior years. So that was very nice to work with them. No factors were applied. We don't have to adjust any of the local assessors values either up or down. So that's another positive. And if you
Excuse me, Dave, when you're talking, can you use the page number of the report, not the PDF too?
yes, page 10 of 49. It should be. Yep. So what you're looking at is a comparison. On the left-hand side, it's by community. Townships are at the top alphabetically, and then cities are at the halfway point, again, alphabetically. And the improvement in value for each of the respective communities on the left-hand side represented the assessed value, half of market value. And on the right-hand side, it's the 2019 taxable value compared to the 2020 taxable value. Again, that's the process under Proposal A, where properties are capped at the rate of inflation or 5%, with the exceptions being new construction and ownership transfers that would become uncapped or popped up, as we've talked about in the past. Just from a highlight standpoint, the market value of properties increased, again, right in the middle of the page at 5.84% on the value side. Proposal A did keep that down to a taxable value increase of 4.46%. Last year in April, May, I think it was actually May this past year, when we gave a property tax overview as part of the 5-year fiscal plan, we had estimated an increase of 4.25%. So we did a little better on the taxable value for 2020 than what we projected a year ago by about 0.2%. Every 1% of taxable value relates to about $2.5 million in property taxes based on our 4.02 for this year millage rate. The timeliness of the assessors reporting to us allows us to be able to create this report. It gives us our taxable value. It allows us to re-benchmark for the future years much quicker. So I do again want to thank all the local assessors and report that the $81.19 billion of SEV actually exceeds the 2007 value that was the previous high. So it's taken us 13 years to get back to where we were, to slightly exceed where we were in 2007. The taxable value isn't quite there yet. That's some of the assuming you guys are looking for the same type of reports as in prior years, that's the type of information that I'll be putting together now that this is done for a property tax overview. Additionally, another point of good news is that our millage reduction fraction has been able to be calculated, and we had estimated that our maximum allowable millage for this July levy would have been 4.0471. It actually calculated out to 4.0468. And again, in the General Appropriations Act, we for this July levy, it's set at 4.02. And I guess with that high level, I would be opening it up to any questions.
Thank you, Dick. Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Zach.
Okay, so Dave, a couple of things. I don't fully understand the personal property assessment, what we're looking at, how we're doing that, what's entailed. You know, that's newer, and how is that compared to the taxable value too?
The personal property tax is a self-reported tax on business property, machinery and equipment in businesses. So what that is it's an annual process where they file their personal property statements, and the valuation is set by a depreciation schedule that's set by the State Tax Commission. A number of years ago, I think it was 2012, we voted to change some of the personal property tax law, exempting personal property that had a true cash value of $80,000 or less. That just, they do not pay personal property taxes anymore. They file a form with us that's subject to audit that says that they attest that their property isn't worth $80,000 and they do not pay property taxes. Along with that, the eligible manufacturing equipment is being phased out from the assessment rolls, and starting 2016 through 2023, they pay a different tax, a specific tax to the state, that we then get our share of that money. And if you remember Lynn reporting the last couple of years, we've actually received more money than what we had budgeted for, what we had calculated. It's a very complicated formula that they can't explain to us how they calculate our reimbursement, that loss of tax revenue. But the last couple of years, it's exceeded what we thought we were owed. So we didn't really do much about that.
Okay, so I'm not the only one. So the state is calculating it and giving it to us. Is that what's
Right.
happening?
That's correct. And that's why a few years, when this started, we pulled the personal property out separate from the real property in the 5-year fiscal plan. We're supposed to be made whole to the 2013 value. And I get some feedback here. I don't know if that's me. And real property is really in our plan. I don't know if it answers your question.
Okay, one more question. So any impact on the COVID? You know, are we looking at that?
Yes. As I understand the question, I'm trying to turn my volume all the way down. It's bothering me. As I understand your question, any impact on the COVID, this will be property values set as of December 31st, 2019. So to answer your question, no, there's no real COVID impact in these numbers. But however, going forward for 2021, I've already talked, and exchanged emails with Sean Carlson, Mitch Bean, and Bob Klein, that I'm concerned about what's going to happen for 2021 and beyond in our 5-year fiscal plan. If the increase of taxable value in that fiscal plan was an additional 4.25%. Right now, today, I don't think that that's achievable. I don't know what, and we've talked about that as a M&B team, and I know that they're working through some of that to update that fiscal plan. It's difficult to say what the CPI will be with the infusion of what nationally what Treasury's doing. the new construction is deemed as non-essential right now. So that some of these things, and if you step back and think about it from just a logical standpoint, the buying and selling of houses is going to be affected by this. I think people that do not have to move are going to move. A number of the unemployment would be a factor in on that. The new construction, the ownership transfers, which are the uncappings, those are all going to be factored in, and I think in an adverse way. And I would open it up to your comments as a group. To some of you have been on the committee for a long time, or been commissioners for a long time. And what are you seeing in your communities as well? I'm not trying to beg that back off on you, but I'm very concerned about the future years relative to property taxes, which represents 55% of the general fund.
Well, I am personally concerned because we're obviously shutting down the real estate market, people buying and selling right now. I'm just going to throw this out here. Clearly, if we're not going to reach what we budgeted for next year, I don't think we should be rolling back our tax at all from 4.04 to 4.02. And that would be a recommendation I'm just throwing out there. You're telling me we don't need to, so let's not roll back. Thank you.
Could I just explain that process? Because the tax rate is completely up to the Board of Commissioners and the county executive. That's my job, is to give you the authorized rate.
Correct. Thank you.
So the process of why we've always built a budget that was less than the maximum, or tried to, when we've been successful, is right now we're currently trying to figure out the maximum authorized rate for the levy of July 2021. So we have it for 2020. It's set, and you can change that by board resolution. But our theory had always been in the prior administration that we would rather have a millage rate in our budget that was lower than what maximum authorized was, knowing you could do that. You could, by board resolution, levy the maximum authorized, but it would be problematic that if my estimate, it wasn't just mine and Lori's and Bob's estimate was, and Lynn's, if we said, for example, 4.02 is what we're going to levy, and it calculated out, 4.00, every 0.01 is up to around $630,000. So it's not a ton of our overall collection, but it would be a problem of collection of revenue in a budget that started the prior October, that we would find out about it here in April. So we're 7 or 8 months into the budget, and we find out we have a current year problem. So that's why we've always done it that way. And obviously, we're going to do our best to give you the maximum authorized rate, and the county executive team, obviously our best estimate going forward. And what we levy is your call. Dave, you're muted.
Yeah. I got Commissioner Spiz and then Commissioner Gingell. So Commissioner Spiz.
Yeah, just to comment on that topic. From my perspective, I want to move ahead cautiously. I don't want to necessarily overreact at this point because we're still early into this whole issue with the virus. It's all going to really depend on how soon and how quickly we can come out of it on the backside of it. How early can we get people back to work? How soon can we get realtors out there selling houses, etc. I talked to someone yesterday relative to people refinancing houses, and they say they're just as busy as they were before we went into this virus right now. So things are happening, but that's now, because those were all in motion a month ago. But that doesn't mean things are going to slow here in the next month or so.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gingell.
Yeah, I was just going to echo Commissioner Spiz's comments around our planning for the 2021 budget and 3-year plan. I think it is wise to use a lower rate than what we might expect achieving. It'll help us also ensure our spending's aligned with the lower rate. But the other thing I would say is, Dave, we don't know how this is all going to play out. And the SAV, taxable value, is kind of a trailing factor. So as things occur and the next year comes and then the SEVs get reset, it's a trailing effort. But what I would suggest is, if it's not you, someone in management and budget, that we're looking at like tax delinquencies, foreclosures, unemployment rate, things of that nature, just trying to draw ratios and correlations, and then looking back at 7, 8, 9, and 10, not saying that we need to have a negative view of what's occurring. I'm hoping that things turn around quickly and there's a minimal impact, but we should just be vigilant of where things may go. And those types of indicators would help us understand if we're going to have a problem as we get a year or 2 or 3 out, the way that we're looking at the budget. So just things to consider.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Dave. Pam, why don't you call the roll on approving the equalization report?
Okay, Commissioner Zach,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
motion carried.
Could I ask one
Thank-
question, Chairman Woodard?
Yeah.
If
Okay.
either
Yes, go ahead.
caucus wants to pull this off of the consent agenda, can you let me know? I don't have any problem dialing into the meeting next Monday, but I'll try to be online, I guess, if they want to talk about it. So if you hear that it's going to go off consent, can you let me know?
Will do. Will do. No worries about that. Thank you. It moves us into item 4, Human Resource Department revision to Merit Rule 23 for annual leave buyback. I need a motion. Moved by Commissioner Quarles, seconded by Commissioner Zach. Is Heather on or April? Oh, there is April. Oh, unmute yourself. There. Hi, April.
How are you? Hi there, how are you?
Welcome.
Good.
Explain the proposal before us.
Sure. So typically, over the last few years, every August, we allowed people to buy back 1 week's of vacation. Typically, those who were maxing out or getting close to would take that advantage. We're finding that obviously, given the COVID experience as it relates to people having and canceling vacations, but also all hands on deck, especially for those areas that are 24/7 operations, they're unable to use their vacation and they would lose it. So rather than trying to figure out how to navigate all that, it was suggested that we could move it up from August to right now in April. It's in the same budget year, and allow them to do that now to help eliminate some of that loss of vacation time.
Thank you. So
So that's where our request is.
So just to be clear, I mean, it just doesn't have a budget impact. It's just doing it in April rather than doing it in August.
Yeah, the only different, I mean, obviously, we don't know how many people take it. There might be more this year just because the more people that maybe would have spent down their vacation bank this spring. So there could be more. But we were going to offer it in August anyway. So that is the request. The
Commissioner
request
Spitz.
also, go ahead.
Commissioner Spitz.
And I guess based on that description, it's not exactly how I read it in the resolution. Maybe I'm reading the resolution differently. It looks like we were looking to change the buyback program going forward altogether, not just this one time.
Sorry, yeah. So the request is just to keep it silent on when we do it in case we another time during the year that something happens again. That doesn't necessarily always have to be August. We would just make that determination and one time during the budget process during that whole year. So if that's uncomfortable, we can keep it August, but we just thought it made sense to make the merit rule a little more flexible in case in the future we need to readdress timing. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Gingell.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm still confused over this because I read it the same way as Commissioner Spiz did, that we're making more of a sweeping change to a current merit rule. So maybe you can just walk me through, because I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I can tell you at my place of work, people are working from home. Their vacations are getting pushed out. We just required them to take mandatory vacation this week in some instances. And it certainly is not the best situation, but we're not reaching out to buy people's vacation back that they're not able to take or things of that nature. So I just don't understand why we would do it at the county. It just doesn't seem necessary to me. It's nice, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Great. Hey,
Should we respond to that?
yeah, Avery, you want to respond to that?
Sure. I mean, I think, like I said, we already are providing it. We just wanted to move it up, and we are trying to we are working through with administration to figure out what does the workforce look like for the, second half of April, as well as potentially May and June. So I don't think this is going to eliminate the problem. It would just help right now, rather than waiting until August.
Commissioner Ginzel.
But I understand your concern.
So I guess if I were inclined to support it, I would try to want to limit the scope. And I would say that we'd make a one-time exception to address it in April instead of August, and that we would put special focus on the group of employees that are required to be in the 24/7 or emergency operation situation. And I mean, that, do we know for sure that anybody had vacations planned that they're not going to be able to take, that we're turning around to pay them for? I mean, or is this just hey, I can get an opportunity to, take advantage of this program now?
We have 43 people who are already at max, and we have another almost over 400 that are going to be at max in the next 6 weeks. I don't have the printout of
So, if I may,
which department.
can you help me understand what being at max means?
So you are allowed to carry so much vacation time, and then you can't go over that. And so I believe the minimum requirement is you have to have at least 60 in your bank. But we have a certain level that we won't let you go over as it relates to vacation. So you might have people who've been here for 25, 30 years who have a healthy bank, but we have a certain level that they can't go past. So they either have to take vacation. And again, I think in 17 or 18 is when it was, or it might have been longer than that, I apologize, that they allowed the buyback program of 1 week.
Mm-hmm. So
It's
so
mostly
I'm just-
people who have a lot of vacation, who've been here for a long time.
Sure. So like in my business, in the private sector, somebody that's been there a long time might have 4 weeks of vacation or 5 weeks of vacation. And if they don't use it by the end of the year, they lose it. And at times we'll put a process in place that says you can roll over 1 week, right? But if I had 5 weeks and I didn't take any of it, I may be able to roll over 1 week. So instead of rolling it over to the next year, we are actually buying a week from those folks. That's what we're doing. 'Cause I'm trying to understand why we're doing it.
Well,
Sure.
if I can, when we first instituted this was designed for, in order to manage the workforce flow, that people who had accrued this much vacation, it was very much a use it or lose it scenario. And so in order to keep the labor force on instead of losing it, we instituted this a few years back to allow to buy back up to 1 week for these defined categories. So that people didn't rush, if you will, to start spending a lot of vacation time that they had rightfully and appropriately accumulated. That was the discussion. Commissioner Ginger, we'll come back. I got Commissioner Spiz here.
Yeah, and I guess in general, going through what we're going through right now, I agree with Commissioner Ginzel about if we could maybe amend this current resolution to make it a one-time thing. I think we'd be more amicable to accepting it. But also, I'd like to maybe throw out there that as part of the last resolution with the hiring freeze. I know Commissioner Ginzel mentioned this in the private sector. A lot of companies are forcing their people to take the vacations now because they're working from home, right? Because you don't want everybody coming back to work and all of a sudden taking all their vacation either. So I think it's something we as a board of commissioners need to discuss. Should we be forcing them to take the vacations while they're working from home anyway?
Understand.
As a way to, from a budgetary perspective, and two, so we don't get resource limitations at the end of this year when hopefully this virus is past us.
Commissioner Quarles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look at this buyback program, especially now and moving up as an advantage to the county, because as we're going through this crisis, we will need people to be around. And if they're buying back their vacation, that may mean, I view that as saying that some of the key positions, public safety in particular, and other 24/7, those people will be available to work. So I think as we look at it now, it's there to help the county and help the employee. I don't know if there's any reason to change it, but whatever the right thing to do and in carrying it forth, I think it'll be an advantage to the county. But the key thing right now is buy back now so that we can have the people in those critical jobs available to us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any further discussion on the resolution before us? Seeing none. Pam, why don't you call the roll?
Okay, Commissioner Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
No.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Angel,
No.
Zach,
Yes.
Woodward.
Yes,
We have 4 yeas and 2 nays.
the motion carries. It moves us on to item number 5, Human Resources Renewal of Eligibility Lists. Can we get a motion? Moved by Commissioner Coral, seconded by Commissioner Gingell. And I believe we have, I think, April, are you taking this on or? is-
Christy's gonna go online for us.
Okay, fantastic. Christy? You there, Christy? I saw Christy earlier. Hold on a second. Oh, I see Christy's there.
This is April. She said she's talking, but apparently we can't hear her,
We
so.
can't hear her.
Okay, let me grab this item here.
Christy, if you want to sign out and sign back in, that might be, might work. I'm going to eject you to help with that.
Hey, Dave.
Commissioner Gingell.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So just to, maybe this one's an easy one. I know Christy's trying to log back in, but essentially all that's being requested is that for these certain job categories that we're extending out the recommendation 6 months so that these departments can continue to look for people to hire in these particular spots, right?
Right. And we got
Yeah.
corrections, deputy dispatch and the medical examiner office.
Yes.
Yes. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward to me, I think.
Is there any discussion or questions that any commissioners have? Sorry, Christy. Well, watch how fast we're gonna do this. Pam, why don't you call the roll on this item?
Okay, Commissioner Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Woodward.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Right, and the motion carries. It brings us on to the 6th and final item, miscellaneous resolution 20099 Board of Commissioners moratorium of county hiring, creation of new positions, filling of vacant positions, transfer and promotions, sponsored by both Commissioner Zach and Commissioner Gingell. Moved by Commissioner Gingell, seconded by Commissioner Zach. Is there any discussion? I think it's pretty straightforward. Commissioner Spiz and Commissioner Quarles.
Just one thing to bring up for sure is we just discussed the exception list, and I don't see the exception list in this resolution.
You say the
Unless I missed
exception
it.
list.
We just voted on the people on the exception list to extend it. Don't we need
Well,
to have
for the
those
one-
positions on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's a standalone resolution by itself, that given the exception to those.
But when do we get where one resolution overrides another resolution? You know what I mean? We approve an exception list, but then we approve a hiring freeze that doesn't reference that exception list. It just might be a point of clarification that we can somehow add some wording. to
That's
this.
fine. We can add some language to ensure that we recognize that resolution as part of this, as part of the exception.
Okay, and then also on the second, or the first, be it further resolved, we have the PTNEs on there. Is it to be read that grant-funded programming that require PTNEs? Because that's not exactly how I read it.
The first be it for, now they're
Yeah. It calls out the exceptions, right?
required.
There's grant-funded programming and part-time non-eligible personnel. Is the intent not to put a hiring freeze on PTNEs, or is the intent to put a part-time, or put a hiring freeze on everybody unless they're affected by grants for PTNEs?
I read this, oh man, there's grant-funded programming and part-time. Where's the response? Families will be indicated required to fill positions as part of the funds. I read this as including part-time non-eligible personnel.
Okay.
I guess I would
So
talk to the
there are also,
sponsors.
so we could hire as many
Sponsors.
part-timers as we wanted to. Is how I read it.
Okay,
I'll defer for now.
we can differ, all right. Commissioner Quarles, all right, Commissioner Gidgel is on that point?
It was.
Okay, so Commissioner Gidgel on that point, and then Commissioner Quarles.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we can work to clarify it. The way it reads right now is that PT&Es are independent of anything else. We do use PT&Es quite a bit in our sheriff deputy ranks, and I think that's why they were called out in separately and left separately. But between now and the board meeting, happy to work on an amendment if there's anything that needs to be clarified on this, and or the inclusion of the exception list that we just approved.
Thank you. Commissioner Quarles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very supportive of this resolution. I would just, in the first paragraph, in the first, be it further resolved. I know it's implied, but I would like to have it clearly stated that we're talking about public safety. So I would like to add the word public safety after 24/7 operation.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you have an amendment that's in your packet from Commissioner Quarles.
And it's at the,
At the end of the packet.
When was it added, Chris? I have to go online and get it?
this is
You would have,
in addition to the title amendment change we need to do, correct?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think there's a title change amendment that we have to also do.
Not resulting from,
That's in our packet. That's not related to what you were bringing up.
yeah.
Chris?
Mine is, I just wanted to be clear that public
there it is.
safety.
Yep, I see it. Okay. No, it's when I refreshed, it's right after that. So there's an amendment to add the words including public safety, like literally right after 24/7 operations. then adding the language including public safety.
Yes,
And so you move that amendment,
yes, I'd like to move that amendment.
moved by Commissioner Quarles, seconded by Commissioner Zach. Does everyone have the amendment in front of them? If you refresh your pack. So so after the resolution in the pack, there's a amendment dealing with a slight title change that we have to take up as well. And then scroll down, it's on page 102 of 102 in the packet of the PDF. So you see it, commissioners?
Yes.
So, and again, I think that Commissioner Quarles said that this is, it's kind of implied in your 27 operation. It just adds clarity to the point that public safety is. Okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. Pam, why don't you call the roll?
Okay, on the amendment to add including public safety
Mm-hmm.
in the first be it further resolved. Commissioner Gingell,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
motion carried.
We also have another amendment. This is on 101 of the PDF. It deals with a slight technical change to the title, moved by Commissioner Zach, seconded by Commissioner Gingell. And the amendment strikes transfers and promotions at the top. In part that those aren't actually addressed in this, and it might become necessary to move people around when positions are vacant, and then expressly, a typo, and then including a special revenue fund to make sure this applies across all of those special revenue funded positions. Any discussion on that?
Do.
Commissioner Spiz?
Yeah, it's just a quick question. I guess I'm not clear on why we would need to take that out, because we have exceptions farther down that allows for things to happen outside of this resolution if one approved by the board, or if they're in the emergency portion by the county exec. So what is the benefit of taking that terminology out of there?
Well, the resolution is not actually speaking to transfers and promotions in the hiring freeze policy. So
Okay.
the first stop was just literally a title change. It's not.
I understand.
Right, okay.
I guess maybe I read it or took this whole resolution as we're freezing a majority of everything at this point until June 30th.
I think, Mr. Chair, if I can, the special revenue fund issue, of course, relates to those programs operated by the Water Resources Commissioner, proprietary funds, etc.
Yeah, I understood that part. I'm just more of the title change is my
The
question.
title change, okay. And the title change is
I'll
that.
defer.
Right, yeah, this resolution would not prohibit transfers within departments. I mean, particularly if a position opens up because someone leaves, that may be necessary to be able to continue government operations. Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just speak on the record as far as my personal intent. It is similar to Commissioner Spiz's that I expect if there are transfers or promotions, they'll be fairly limited. The other thing is, at the end of the day, the county has so many, full-time equivalents, so many people working today. This resolution, from my perspective, is to say that that number is not going to increase in any significant way, and perhaps may go down. So just for clarity, from my perspective on the record, the other question I would have is, since we're making amendments now, do we want to incorporate some wording that talks to the exception list as approved by the board would also not be impacted by this resolution?
We can. I just don't think it's written yet.
Mr. Chair, if I think I might have the answer to Commissioner Spiz's question. I think it relates to the issue of so many front-facing departments right now that are closed down, not able to operate, and I believe there's a desire to have the flexibility to place people in different departments, and that may involve transfers and promotions, perhaps even on a limited basis. And so I think that's why they were looking for that change.
Right. Well, it's not really a change to the language. I mean, what the resolution does is just a change to the title. And to Commissioner Gingell's point, I think, I agree. I look at the number of people that we have as part of county government. We expect it to stay the same. In some cases, possibly go down. People leave county employment over the course of the next few months. So that's, I mean, again, technical in nature because the resolution broadly doesn't actually speak to transfers and promotions, which implies that they are allowable per direction of department heads.
Yeah, and I guess I can understand that. It just, a lot of times in situations like this is when you get people transferring, moving, promoting, you create vacancies in other areas that you have to backfill is only thing I'd be worried about, but I'm not gonna stop it based on that.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So let's do the roll call vote on this amendment, unless there's any further question on this amendment, and then we can go back to Commissioner Gingell's point about if we want to craft an amendment right now to make considerations for exemptions that have been given as outlined in the previous resolution. So Pam, why don't you call the roll?
Okay, on the amendment, Zach,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Fizz,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, that brings it back to the main motion on the resolution. Commissioner Gingell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my suggestion would be if we're all looking at page 101 and the amendment that says the first be it further resolved that exceptions to this freeze includes cases where employees are required to fill positions, et cetera. Does everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion would be, and I know we don't have it written here, but right before the very last sentence that says hiring outside of these parameters will be on a case-by-case basis, I would just add a sentence that says like positions approved on the exception list by the board are exempt. Then that way this comes to the board with Commissioner Spin's issue addressed, it's clean, and hopefully there's not amendments at the full board. If the committee is willing to take that friendly amendment.
I don't
Can you
have any
repeat
objection.
that, please? I couldn't understand it.
You want to read it one more time, or Mike? Would you?
Yes. So,
Insert a sentence right before hiring outside these parameters. Like, what do you got?
I had interference.
okay, the sentence would be positions approved by the board in the exception report are exempt.
I would say previously approved.
Previously approved. I mean, although we just approved them today and there'll be others that might
They'll be
come
doing them at
before
the
us.
same day. I think if they've been.
I'd just say approved. I wouldn't worry
Okay,
about
fair with
previous.
Yeah. All those positions would have come before the board. The positions approved by the board.
On the exception report are exempt.
You got that, Pam? Okay. Move. Commissioner Gingell moves. Seconded by. Is there a second? Second by Spiz. Any further discussion? I think it's pretty straightforward. All right, seeing none. Pam, why don't you call the roll? On the amendment.
Okay, on the amendment, Quarles,
Yes.
Fizz,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, brings us back to the main motion. Any further discussion?
Just the one other thing, if from an amendment, any other discussion on PTNEs? Is it intent just to keep the PTNEs there? That we're not going to look at reducing the hiring of them?
Roll the committee. Commissioner
Mr.
Quarles.
Chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm not quite clear on Commissioner Spitz's question. Could you give me clarity? What the question is centered around?
Well, I think it's the way that it is. There's a question of how it's worded. And specifically, it's the, oh, I'm getting some bad feedback here. One second.
Is the concern in the first, be it further resolved?
Yes.
Am I-
Yes.
Yeah, Nancy, my concern is after the special revenue funds, it says, and part-time non-eligible personnel, which means everybody that's PTNE is how my read is on that. So if we're gonna allow unlimited hiring of PTNEs, I think it reads okay, but if our intent is not to do that, to limit the hiring of PTNEs, I think we need to word that slightly different.
Right. Well, I think this is also an operations issue. So, April, I don't know, are you still on the line? See April here. Hi, April.
Hi there, yes.
She reappeared. All right. So I guess clarity here, because I think there's, I want to address the confusion and then specifically how this is written and how this impacts departments. So
Sure.
can you give
So
me,
the intention, go ahead.
go ahead.
So we do a significant number of part-time PTNEs in the Parks Department, as well as deputies. Those are the main ones, and sometimes some summer employment issue that may not fall in line with seasonal. So that's where that comes from. That's usually where the PTNEs are.
Okay.
And then they're the ones that were, there are some in some departments, but they're more of, they may be support for on the clerical side or in other pieces. So they're kind of all over the board, but the majority that we would be hiring over these next few weeks would be the parks, and we want to leave room open for the deputies.
So the idea is to allow for part-time non-eligible to fill these positions that are coming forward, which makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we can leave it the way it is. Thank you, April. Any further questions, discussion? Seeing none, Pam, why don't you call the roll?
Okay, on the resolution as amended, Gershenson? Gershenson, you're muted.
Yes.
Okay. Gingell,
Yes.
Zach,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Biz,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right. The motion passes. That brings us to other business where there is none, and we'll be adjourning until we are convened again. And then I will work with Commissioner Gingell and Commissioner Spiz, the one item for sure being placed on the regular agenda. If there are additional ones that any member of either caucus wants, particularly as Dave Heber referenced, if we want those on the regular agenda, just make sure that he's present to be able to ask any questions. Commissioner Quarles.
I'd just like to thank the staff for putting the information on the agenda to sign on to the meetings, the phone numbers. Boy, I really found that handy. Just want to let that be known.
All right, great. Thank you. And thanks to all the staff. Working through the technology issues, working our way through this like everybody else is. And so I thank you for being, for all the support that you give us so that we can conduct the important business that we have to. Seeing no further business, I will declare the meeting adjourned.